So the UFC just recently announced two massive title fights that will be taking place at UFC 311 in Los Angeles in the new year. Man, I'm excited, man. These are not only two outstanding matchups that I was so looking forward to, and I'm glad that the UFC has booked these, and that is the main event, Islam Makhachev taking on Arman Tsarukyan in the highly anticipated rematch. That is a crazy fight. And then in the co-main, Merab Dvalishvili wasn't ducking out of this one, man. He wasn't getting out of this one. He is going to be going up against Umar Numragomedov. And not only that, the card is absolutely loaded. I mean, you got Yuri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill on here, which I already broke that fight down. I'll go ahead and link that down below. Then we have Jakeem Almeida versus Sergey Spivak. Grappler's Delight. Kevin Holland versus Rainer Derrida. That is an interesting fight because we just saw what Derrida was able to do, and Holland's always in a fun scrap. I mean, the list goes on and on. This card is, UFC starting out, 2025 with an absolute bang. And look, we have to give the UFC their credit. Look, it's very easy to come on here and be negative and complain when the UFC does some BS matchmaking and it doesn't make sense, or they kind of tend to put business first sometimes instead of what maybe the best matchup that should be happening. So when they do something like this, man, we got to clap it up. We got to give the UFC their due because they absolutely crushed it with this card. Because not only, I want to break down the main event and the co-main event. I want to break down both fights, and then I will give you my early predictions and kind of where my head is at right now, just a little ways out from the fight. But guys, these are two outstanding matchups when you talk about the main and co-main event, because not only are they great competitive fights, I believe that Arman Tsarukyan inside of a UFC lightweight division that has some outstanding fighters. I believe that Arman is the toughest challenge for Islam in the division, while inside the bantamweight division, I believe Umar is Merab's toughest challenge. I know that, you have Sean O'Malley who just fought, Merab, and people are like, oh, well, O'Malley, he should just get the rematch. Why the hell should he get the rematch? Why should he get the rematch? Put Merab in there with the toughest challenge and the next best guy in the division, which is definitely, in my opinion, Umar, who just went out there and beat Corey Sandhagen, which we will discuss a little bit more of that as we go here. But let's waste no more time and hop into it, man. The main event between Islam and Arman. Look, everyone knows that this fight, the first time it went around, happened back in 2019. It was a close fight, right? It was a good back and forth. And what you got to see was Islam pushed. And I know a lot of people, when they hear, Islam Makhachev, they look at the record and they're like, oh, well, there's this loss on here. What the hell happened? And you look and he got knocked out by a southpaw and you're like, oh, well, he got KO'd. Let's be honest with what that was. That was kind of Islam where he was green on the feet. He just got caught by a shot he didn't see coming. If you run that fight back now, Islam steamrolls the guy, right? So I don't think, that's anything that's like, shit just happens, right? But when you talk about the Arman matchup, we really got to see Islam tested in one of his hardest fights inside of his career, because when you talk about both of these guys, what I love about this rematch taking place now is whenever you have it happen and then it's like, oh, well, it was kind of close, but we're just going to rebook it a few months later. It's kind of fun, but to me, what's really fun is when this happened, just a few years ago. Both guys, they don't see each other for a while. They kind of go their separate ways. They start rattling off wins and building their legacies in the division, and then their paths finally cross down the line after Arman has been on a tear, after Islam has been on an absolute tear. There is a lot on this fight because I believe that, again, when the fight took place, a few years ago, we've seen a lot change since then, right? I think that Islam's striking has improved dramatically. I think his boxing is a lot more clean. The kickboxing, he's actually he's hurting people on the feet, right? You saw against Alexander Volkanovski in their rematch, was able to set him up with a beautiful high kick, right? That was a perfect setup by Islam. He's working with Javier Mendez and team, and they just do an outstanding job preparing their fighters. And with Khabib, the game planning, the way that they are able to dissect the opponents and formulate game plans is some of the best that we see in the sport. So I expect Islam to be fully prepared coming into this fight. I believe that he is the one that has made more improvements since the first fight. But you got to give credit to Arman, because I think that when you look at Islam, right, when you watch him fight, it's like, well, where are the weaknesses here, right? Feel free to let me know below. I don't see many weaknesses. The guy can strike, he can grapple, he can do absolutely everything. And we've seen a lot of improvements from him. but we've also seen improvements from Arman, because when you watch Arman Tsarukyan, he's been on a tear, right? He's finishing people with vicious ground and pound. You saw against Silva. Then he goes out there, against Beneil Dariush, an absolutely violent KO. I mean, that was really a statement win for Arman Tsarukyan, going out there against a pretty good grappler. People tend to forget about Beneil Dariush, man. Like, that dude, I know he looks like he's 60 years old with the gray hair and shit, but like, he's still a good fighter, right? He's a solid fighter. And Arman goes in there and absolutely steamrolls him. Then he gets basically what we were kind of assuming was a number one contender fight, where between Arman and Oliveira, and whoever was going to win was probably going to get that rematch down the line with Islam. And Arman goes in there and wins a pretty close fight over Charles Oliveira. People are saying robbery. I don't think it was a robbery. I do think it was a close fight. But again, people are like, well, Arman wasn't super exciting in that fight. Again, when you utilize the grappling and you're going in with a wrestle-heavy game plan against Charles, you got to be careful. Guy's one of the best submission guys in the history of MMA, not just the UFC, MMA period. So you have to be very careful when you're just entertaining the grappling. And then on the feet, Charles is good, right? He's got really good Muay Thai technique, good power, and the worry is if you get hurt by him, he'll just jump on a limb and sub your ass and get you out of there. So Arman Tsarukyan, he's been on an absolute tear. He's made a lot of improvements. He's a big, physically strong guy for the weight class. He's got outstanding power in his striking, and I think that when you come into a fight with Islam, and as well as like when you go back in history, like Islam is one of the most complete mixed martial artists of all time. There is no question that we are looking at one of the best fighters in MMA period, right? And especially, by the time it's all said and done, I think that he is going to be possibly in that GOAT conversation. So especially, for the lightweight division. So when you watch Islam, not a lot of weaknesses, but if you can bring something to the table that can kind of have him on his heels, like really good power, like good wrestling, and improved striking like Arman is going to provide, I think that is enough to definitely cause some issues from Islam, because what we've seen from Makhachev over his past few fights goes out there against Dustin Poirier. And while I think Poirier, he's a fan favorite, right? DP is one of the best fighters to never win an undisputed title. Remember, he won the interim title over Max Holloway. But, he's got outstanding striking, good jiu-jitsu, but he's not Arman, right? Arman is a very complete fighter. Maybe Poirier is the better striker here, but when you talk about the grappling, when you talk about, just the overall skill set, Arman Tsarukyan, he is a monster. And then Islam Makhachev, so that's a little bit of a different fighter here. And then when you talk about, Islam going out there against Volkanovski, back-to-back fights, the first one was very close. The second one, Volk took on short notice. Just see Islam set him up beautifully with a nasty head kick. And then going back to when he won the title over Charles Oliveira, absolutely spectacular performance. Going out there, rocking him on the feet. And what we saw, guys were able to hurt Charles. But the problem was they were scared to follow him to the ground because of the submission threat. And Islam says, fuck that, I don't care. I'm going to hurt you on the feet, follow you to the ground, put you, in a submission. I believe it was an arm triangle, get you out of there. Absolutely spectacular stuff by Makhachev. Both guys have been on an absolute tear since the first time they fought. I think that we're looking at a similar but yet very different fight, because I think Islam has made some really good improvements in terms of the striking. He's been running through everybody and, coming off of a tough fight with Dustin Poirier to where he was able to find a finish late. But I believe that the guy that has made the most improvement since the first time around is probably Islam, because I think in terms of the striking right now, I don't want to say forget about the grappling, but he can stand in front of anyone, right? He's standing in front of Poirier, outstriking him basically, right? He's got good boxing, good timing. He's sliding in and out of range really, really well, setting things up. The way he, was throwing that kick to the leg, to the body, to eventually come upstairs right over that, hand protecting the side of the head of Volkanovski. Perfectly timed kick, perfectly set up. And when you see that, you see a guy that's really starting to get it on the feet. And then when it comes to the grappling, there's not much to say other than Islam is one of the best in the sport when it comes to that. He, everyone wants to compare him to Khabib, and I get it, but very different fighters, right? I think Islam is a better striker, but when it comes to the grappling, I still think Khabib is better. And Islam's not as aggressive when chasing the grappling, but when it comes to the trips, like he did against Arman in the first fight, and when it comes to control and looking for submissions, he's one of the best in the sport. I think Islam can get it done in the rematch. I think he's able to find a finish. I think he's able to hurt Arman on the feet and then ultimately get to a submission. But Islam's got to be careful because, like I said, Arman Tsarukyan, if you are going to try to go in there and take out Makhachev, you got to bring something special to the table. You got to bring something dynamic that he just doesn't see in every other fighter. And I do believe that Arman possesses really good power, improved striking. I think that his wrestling has gotten better over time. I mean, not a particularly great look against Chimaev in that video that was going around. I know people are like, oh, well, Chimaev's way bigger than him. But yeah, but Arman's smaller. He's supposed to be a little bit quicker, and Chimaev looked way faster. And I know Chimaev's a freak athlete, so like I'm not trying to read too much into that. But Makhachev and team are looking at that and they're going, okay, if we get to the grappling, we feel confident here. Like I said, I know Khamzat's bigger. I'm just saying, like Islam to me, or Arman to me, he didn't look that fast in some of the training. I know training footage is kind of what it is, but I think Makhachev is the better grappler. I think he's got better submissions. I think in terms of the striking, he's very much improved since their first time around. I think that he will outstrike Arman. And again, I don't see Tsarukyan having a ton of success in the grappling. While I think he's a big, strong guy, he's made great improvements. I just think Makhachev is one of the best in lightweight history and one of the best fighters by the time it's all said and done that we've ever seen inside the sport. So I'm going to go Islam by finish. That's my early prediction. Like I said, very fun matchup. Definitely the hardest fight, I think, for both guys stylistically. Love the matchup. Great job by the UFC to get this one on the books. Moving on. Co-main event, Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Numragomedov. Look, Merab wasn't getting out of this one. And I know people, they get mad at me. And if you aren't following me on X, follow me at JakeGerberMMA. I like to have fun on there, man. But I'll speak my mind, and as I will on here as well. And you are a fool if you think that Merab was excited to fight Umar. He was out there basically making little skits explaining why Umar shouldn't be fighting for a title and all of these different things. But that's what everyone's kind of focusing on. My attention went to, oh, well, he just continues to glaze Sean O'Malley. Oh, and now that Jan won, all he's doing is talking about Jan's performance. Merab couldn't shut the fuck up about talking about Petr Yan's performance. And why is that? Because Merab knows Umar is the hardest fight for him in this division. He absolutely knows that, but it's also, I think, the hardest fight for Umar in the division, which is what makes this so spectacular and so intriguing. But make no mistake about it, Merab wanted the rematch over O'Malley because he knows that he could probably just implement the same game plan, go in there and beat Dana's golden boy and Sean O'Malley. And then, again, people want to tune in and watch O'Malley because he's a fun striker. So, again, you not necessarily are tuning in to watch Merab, but you still will watch the fight because you're excited to see maybe the striking of O'Malley. I don't know. And then you got Petr Yan. Everyone likes Petr Yan. Merab knows that. He's like, well, if I'm going to fight Yan, everyone's going to tune in and watch me fight because everyone likes Yan. And he also knows that he could just go out there, shoot 50 takedowns again, and probably win another dominant decision over Petr Yan. Merab knows what he's doing. He absolutely knows what he's doing. If you think that he was excited to fight Umar, I think you're wrong. That's my opinion. I think you're dead wrong. I don't think that Merab is excited to fight Umar. I think that he was trying to avoid this fight. I do think that he can win it, right? I'm not saying that he can't win this fight. I think that for both guys, this is a very hard matchup. But make no mistake about it. He was trying to avoid this fight. He was trying to get one of those, I don't want to say a layup because Yan and O'Malley are really good fighters and they're both, talented in their own perspectives. But, Umar's definitely a different type of challenge than them. He wanted to beat a big name, get a free title defense, which I kind of get, right? Because, they gave Chito Vera to Sean O'Malley, which was kind of a more or less a free title defense. So I understand what he was going for there. The UFC, I don't think they're huge fans of Merab, right? Leading up to UFC 306 with the Sphere, the BS with the stitches, and you could tell Dana was irritated. And they're like, hell no, we're not giving Merab a layup. Give him the hardest fight for him. And I do believe that that's Umar Numragomedov. And there's a lot of this talk, right, of Umar doesn't deserve a title shot. He doesn't deserve a title shot. Dagestani privilege, this, that. When you go in there and you get thrown into the Shark Tank, you've already proven stuff in the PFL. You come over, you take a couple fights. And by the way, he goes in there against, I believe it was Beksat Almakhan in that fight. And everyone's like, who the hell's Umar fighting? That was a hell of a risk from Umar. This guy, Beksat, was an absolute savage. I believe he was making his UFC debut against Umar. It was supposed to be somebody else. Beksat steps in. That was a hard fight. Almakhan has outstanding power. He's very fast. He's got some pretty decent grappling. That was a hard fight for Umar, right? And he had a lot to lose because he's got the big name in Nurmagomedov, and, the eyeballs are already there. The pressure is already on. He gets rocked. Then eventually gets to the grappling and dominates his way throughout that fight. We learned a lot about Umar. We saw that he could take a shot. He could shake off the cobwebs and find a way to win. And then down the line here, the most recent outing, goes out there in a 5-round fight night headliner against Corey Sandhagen, who I believe outside of Merab is probably the hardest fight for Umar, stylistically, because Corey Sandhagen, he's a fight nerd, right? He's the guy that's, in the lab and he's rolling the tape, and he's like a football coach. He's in there just watching all of your tendencies, trying to find every window of opportunity to make your life miserable, to try to exploit every avenue that he can in the fight. And that's what you saw, right? Very good stand switching, very good footwork from Corey, good kicks, good striking, very well-rounded fighter. But the big thing with Corey that I think is overlooked is if you come in with a grapple-heavy approach, you got to be careful because he will throw up submissions from every single angle. And, perfect example of that is when TJ Dillashaw fought Corey Sandhagen. I mean, TJ was taking him down. TJ's got good wrestling, and Sandhagen's in these crazy positions upside down, throwing up triangles and consistently working for submissions. And like I said, Sandhagen was on a tear, one of the most well-rounded guys in the division, one of the most well-rounded guys, I think, in the sport. Very hard to fight for Umar. Goes out there, gets the job done. I think that was one of the best fights of the year. Maybe not like the most exciting back and forth, like, oh my God, that was a war. But stylistically, to go back and watch the technicalities, that was a technical masterclass between both of these guys. But that is why I'm excited for this fight, because I believe that Umar is Merab's toughest challenge, and then I believe that Merab is Umar's toughest challenge. And because with Merab, whether you like the guy or not, I'm not the biggest fan of Merab, right? In case you can't tell, he's an alien, right? There's nobody else that we've seen in UFC history, and I don't know if in this lifetime here we will see someone with this kind of style that could go out there and, maybe you don't have the biggest fear of, I'm going to get submitted or I'm going to get KO'd against Merab. Look, he's not particularly a finisher. He is a dominant decision win type of fighter. And that has its own fear, right? You come into a fight and you're like, if I don't put Merab's lights out or I don't submit him, this guy's coming after me for the entire duration of the fight. And in this case, it's 25 minutes. So basically 25 minutes of hell is what you're in for against Merab. He's got outstanding wrestling. He doesn't do the best job at controlling you when he gets you down. But the reason that that's almost okay is because he can shoot 100 takedowns in a fight and not get tired. He's got a crazy gas tank, a crazy will, crazy determination. He is one of the most talented fighters in the way that he fights that we have ever seen. I mean, there's really no one like him, and I don't know how you prepare for a guy like that because, again, he does have some decent striking. He does have some power in the things that he does, and you're so worried about being taken down that you are susceptible to getting clipped by some shots. Like you saw against Sean O'Malley. I think what Merab did such a great job of was bouncing around, timing the entries, keeping him constantly guessing, and using that explosion to hesitate. And, he kind of moves like this and explodes in and out. And I thought Merab did an outstanding job. And then what you saw him do against Petr Yan, I mean, I never thought we would see Yan get 50-45 like that. And not to mention, Yan is one of the most technical guys in the sport, one of the most well-rounded fighters, one of the most complete fighters, and Merab steamrolled him. We've seen Yan lose before in some controversial up and down type of fights. We've never seen him get dominated like that. Like no one, whether you like Merab or not, we have never seen anyone do that to Petr Yan. So that is very impressive what Merab has been able to do. He's been on an absolute tear. His game plan is simple. He will shoot 1,000 takedowns in the fight if that's what it takes to win a decision, and he will continue to move forward. He will continue to throw wild strikes because he can get away with it, and then he will continue to pressure you and pressure and continue to shoot takedowns until the end of the fight or you just tire out or whatever the deal is. He is a nightmare kind of matchup, but I believe if anyone is going to have the puzzle or the answer for that, it's going to be Umar. And a lot of that has to do with, yes, the skill set of Umar, but I trust Umar's team, right? Training with Javier Mendez, and the team that they have around them, the way that they are able to formulate game plans, the way that they are able to break down the tape and figure out fighters' tendencies in areas that they can look to exploit and take advantage of is second to none. And I believe in this fight, Umar is the better striker. And I think that when you hear Numragomedov, everyone just goes, oh, grappling. And they think, that that's all the guy has. Where Umar and and Usman over in Bellator/PFL, they're kind of this new breed, right? They got outstanding striking on the feet. They got pretty good boxing. They've got tremendous kicks, which is their best striking asset, in my opinion, is the kicks. So you got to watch out on the feet. And then when it comes to the grappling, he's got outstanding entries. He's got beautiful trips. The way that all around that he has that Sambo style of grappling, it's spectacular, and he has a way to get to the submissions. Umar, he's got 7 submissions on his record. He is a guy that can finish the fight. He's got good striking on the feet. Again, how's he going to do against a guy like Merab who has very good wrestling? We've really never seen throughout Merab's career, maybe back in the day, we've seen some issues in terms of the grappling, but really it's just been Merab has been the hammer when it comes to the grappling. And the question is, will he be the hammer the whole time against Umar in this fight? And again, Umar's pretty much the hammer, at least in his fights. I'm sure in the training room, he's the nail sometimes. I mean, training with Habib and Islam and Usman and those guys. But inside the octagon, inside a fight, I believe that both of these guys are used to being the hammer in terms of the grappling, and I cannot wait to see how that collides, because someone is going to be the nail, or maybe the fight stays on the feet and we see just a strikers kind of matchup where both guys aren't threatening with takedowns. I don't think that's the case. I absolutely think that we see Merab come into this fight, shoot a gazillion takedowns, and it's going to be up to Umar to stop the takedowns, and I'm going to be curious to see how he solves the puzzle of the alien-like pace and pressure that Merab puts on display, because I'm going to say this. In terms of the finishing ability, I think Umar is better when it comes to finishing the fights, and then in terms of a dominant guy that could just go out there and run you over and win a decision, that is definitely Merab. But I trust Umar Numragomedov and his team to come into this with a game plan and a way to stop that onslaught of Merab and that constant pace, to ultimately, if this fight does hit the floor, Umar find a way to control the grappling, find a submission, maybe sting Merab with some shots on the feet, which again is kind of tough, right? Merab is a guy that does get hit. He has been rocked in the past. Not the easiest thing to do if he is able to just employ his game plan and continue to march forward and get to the grappling. But I think Umar and his team find a way to stop it. I think Umar is able to either win this by a decision, but again, against Merab, it's going to be hard to win a decision. It's going to be hard to win a decision. So I'm probably going to have to go submission here if Umar is going to win this fight. I think he can do it. This guy, he's been on a tear, man. Merab Dvalishvili, and then Umar going out there beating Corey Sandhagen like that. Very spectacular, outstanding matchup here. Great job by the UFC to get both of these fights on the books. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you do not miss an upload. I appreciate it. See you next time.